Hi, my name is Scott, and I've decided to make these coasters out of vinyl LP album covers this year. And it was quite a fun project. I learned a few things in the process that I'd share with you a little bit. If you can see these, the surface is matte. And that's important because with coasters, what often happens is, is your drink sticks to it. You pick up the drink, and it falls and clatters on the table. I didn't want that to happen, so I made a matte surface. It's important to protect the surface because this is paper, and you don't want that to sog out over time. I learned a few techniques looking at YouTube videos. People trying to heat them up in the oven and cut them with scissors. People trying to cut them on a bandsaw. It not working out very well. I finally went with a hole saw. I'm going to show you how I did that. The final step is we've got 4-inch round felt circles, and those don't have to be cut out, but you do have to cut a hole for the middle, and then a final protective covering of sealant. So let's get started. I've seen a number of YouTube videos of people heating up records in the oven and cutting them with scissors, leaving you with a very irregular shape that you have to painstakingly sand down later. And I've seen people working with bandsaws and it taking a very long time. What I realized was possible was to do this with a hole saw. This is a 4.5-inch hole saw bit for your common household electric drill. These run about 20 to 25 bucks, and unfortunately you also need a special arbor. That's the special chuck. But 4.5 inches is the dimension you want. That accommodates the size of a standard record label, plus a little excess vinyl on the outside, so it really looks like it's left over from a record. So get that dimension exactly right. The technique that I'm using, and by the way, safety goggles, very important. These sometimes crack and chip in the process. You got to be ready for that, but absolutely wear eye protection. So the technique I use, I've got a board with a hole pre-drilled in it that the centerpiece from the hole saw is going to go down into. Lay that over there. These, by the way, are old scratchy records from the discount bin. I'm getting these at Urban Ore for 50 cents each. They're close to unplayable. You don't want to do this with your star prize records, of course. Once that's lined up, go ahead and step on it. You're going to throw this away so you don't care about it anymore. And I bring the drill in from behind my legs to keep the cord out of the way for safety. And then we're going to get the bit lined up in the hole of the record. Here's the most important thing I've learned. It's really tempting to come straight down into it, but that seems to create so much sudden friction and shock that that's what causes your records to crack. What you want to do is hit this from a little bit of an angle and then just rock slowly in a circle, and it should go through pretty quickly. So, ready? Full speed, angle. Let that wind down. And if you're lucky, it'll pop right out. Now that one did get some chipping on the edges. I have a separate technique for sanding these I'll show in a minute, but this one may be, unfortunately, too chipped to be usable. But most of them come out okay. Records have been made out of so many different vinyl compositions over the years that everyone is different. Some are softer, some are harder, some are brittle, so some will come out better than others. But that's why you want to get the cheap records from the discount bins. Damn, so that one jumped the shark, shoot, and that is ruined. Darn it. Well, you gotta be prepared to lose a few. That's why I use the cheap old records at the end of their lives. One more. Understanding Jazz. Nice. Twink. So when these things come out of the hole saw, the edges are really jagged and grindy, and we need to finish those off. So I wanted to show you the rig I came up with for doing that. I start with a little grinding bit available at the hardware store. It's one I had already laying around, and I'm just going to adapt this slightly using the existing grinding bit as one side of a washer. Take this, slip the record through it, put another washer on the other side, and mount this back in the drill. Tighten it down. And then I use 3 grades of sandpaper. I do a rough paper for starters. I don't know the exact grit dimensions. I don't think it's that important. I use a black. This looks very fine, and it is somewhat fine, but it's also very tough and very gritty. And then a fine finishing wood. And we just kind of give it the old 1-2. Stop it and feel the edges. Make sure I've got the big stuff off. A little more there. Fine pressure. And I'll move on to my ooh, I'm still pretty rough there. That's getting better. And move on to the fine paper. And that is a nice smooth edge now, ready for cleaning and glossing. It's nice if the coasters end up with a nice felt backing to prevent scratching of tables, and so it absorbs a little condensation and lands with a nice thump. Felt is surprisingly hard to cut, but you can order pre-cut felt circles from Amazon. These are exactly 4 inches, which happens to be exactly the same dimension as the label portion of almost all records. To get a hole in the middle, I found that a hole punch I couldn't get to the exact center easily, and it was also very hard to get through the felt. So what I've been doing is just folding these into quarters like that, and just snip a little corner off, and you end up with, unfortunately, a square hole, but nobody really notices that. So then we just have to glue them on. For the actual gluing, I just figure out which side of the label is in the worst condition or has the least interesting song titles or artwork or whatever. I just pick my favorite side and glue the opposite side. So I'm pretty generous with it. I painted on it's plain old Elmer's white glue. No need to go all the way to the edge of the black. You can just go to the edge of the label itself, since the felt is only as big as the label itself, and you want to have as little overspread as possible, of course. And just line it up and press it into place. And that is ready to dry and be lacquered. And now for the final step, I'm going to be lacquering them with Mod Podge Matte Finish Clear Acrylic Sealer. These record labels are paper, and condensation from drinks will soak through and ruin the paper if we don't have a good lacquer finish. So this stuff is about 10 to 12 inches away, and nice and light. We don't want any streaks. Keep it shaking. I'm going to do several coats of this. Let it dry each time, come back every 15 minutes, do a little more. This bottom layer here is, these ones don't have felt on them, and I want to make sure that they don't stick to the canvas below.